Welcome back to Librarian Oasis. I'm Joshua, and I love digging into books to find those little golden nuggets of knowledge.
And I'm Eleanor. I'm all about helping us unlock the wisdom hidden in those pages we never seem to have enough time for.
Today, we're diving deep into uh, Yuval Noah Harari's Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind.
Oh, excellent choice.
It's a book that has uh, really captivated readers worldwide, and for good reason. It tackles this immense story of our species, from our humble beginnings to our current position as masters of the planet.
It's really sweeping narrative.
Before we begin, let me just say, if you haven't read *Sapiens* yet, I highly recommend adding it to your reading list.
Definitely. It's a must read.
Now, are you ready to embark on this journey through time and explore what makes us human?
Absolutely. I'm excited to dive in.
Harari takes us on this whirlwind tour through the entire history of humankind, from the Stone Age to the present day. It's not your typical history book, though.
Right. It's not just about dates and names.
It's more like a grand exploration of the big ideas, the key turning points, and the forces that have shaped us as a species.
Exactly. And it really makes you think.
So let's start at the very beginning. Harari paints this fascinating picture of a world where multiple human species roamed the Earth. We weren't always alone.
It's hard to imagine, isn't it?
Imagine sharing the planet with Neanderthals in Europe, Homo erectus in Asia, even hobbits on the Indonesian island of Flores.
Hobbits. That's always a fun one to think about.
It's mind-boggling to think about.
No.
But out of all these human species, it was Homo sapiens, us, who ultimately prevailed.
And that raises a big question, doesn't it?
The question is how? How did we manage to outcompete and outlast all those other human species? What gave us the edge?
Well, Harari argues that the key turning point was the cognitive revolution, a period that began around 70,000 years ago.
So it's not about physical strength or, superior hunting skills.
Not necessarily, it was about our minds. This is where we develop the capacity for language, for complex communication, and perhaps most importantly, for believing in shared myths.
Shared myths, you mean like stories and legends?
Not just any stories. Harari's talking about the ability to believe in things that exist only in our collective imagination, like nations, religions, and even corporations.
Wait, corporations are myths.
Think about it. A corporation like Apple, for example, doesn't exist in a physical sense. It's a legal fiction, an idea that we collectively agree to believe in. But this shared belief allows millions of people around the world to cooperate, to innovate, and to create things on a massive scale.
That's a fascinating perspective. So it's this capacity for shared beliefs, for collective imagination. That sets us apart from other animals and allowed us to dominate the planet.
Exactly. This ability to unite around shared stories, to cooperate flexibly in large numbers, that's what distinguishes us from all other species. It's the foundation of human civilization.
So we essentially talked our way to the top of the food chain.
You could say that. We created these imagined realities, these shared systems of belief that allowed us to cooperate and organize ourselves in ways that no other animal could.
Now, once we had conquered the globe, we faced a new challenge: how to sustain these growing populations. And that's where the agricultural revolution comes in. But Harari offers this surprising take on this pivotal moment in human history.
Yeah, it's not the usual story we hear.
He calls it history's biggest fraud. He argues that while agriculture brought about settled life and food surpluses, it also trapped us in a cycle of hard labor, a less diverse diet, and even increased susceptibility to famine and disease.
It's a provocative claim for sure.
That's not what we usually hear about the agricultural revolution. How does he justify calling it a fraud?
Well, imagine relying solely on a single crop, like wheat, for sustenance. A bad harvest, a blight, or an infestation could wipe out your entire food supply. Hunter-gatherers, on the other hand, had a much more diverse diet, foraging for a variety of plants and animals. They were less vulnerable to these catastrophic events.
So it wasn't all sunshine and roses for those early farmers. What other downsides did Harari point out?
Well, the increased food production led to population explosions, which created competition for land and resources. And this, in turn, led to social hierarchies, specialized roles, and unfortunately, increased violence.
It seems like those hunter-gatherers might have had a better deal, at least in terms of freedom and leisure time.
Perhaps. But there's no turning back the clock. The agricultural revolution set in motion a chain of events that led us to where we are today, for better or for worse.
So from nomadic bands of hunter-gatherers, we transitioned to settled agricultural societies. What happened next?
As populations continued to grow and societies became more complex, we saw the rise of cities, kingdoms, and eventually empires. Harari explores this process of imperial expansion, and once again, he offers a nuanced perspective.
We typically think of empires as being built on conquest and exploitation. Did Harari challenge that view?
He acknowledges the brutality inherent in imperial expansion, but he also highlights the unifying and standardizing effects that empires often had.
Can you give an example of how an empire might have benefited those it conquered?
Take the Roman Empire, for instance. Through its vast network of roads, standardized laws and currency, and the promotion of a common language, it facilitated trade, communication, and cultural exchange across a vast territory.
It's like building a massive highway system. Sure, it might disrupt some local communities, but it connects people and goods in unprecedented ways.
Precisely. And these imperial structures often outlasted the empires themselves. The Roman legal system, for example, has profoundly impacted legal systems around the world.
So empires, for all their flaws, played a crucial role in connecting and shaping the world.
Indeed. And alongside empires, another powerful force emerged that played a significant role in unifying humanity: religion.
Religion. We often think of it as a source of division and conflict. How does it fit into Harari's narrative of unification?
Harari argues that while religion can undoubtedly be a source of conflict, it has also been a powerful force for unity and cooperation throughout history.
Also,
Shared religious beliefs, even if they're not based in objective reality, can provide a sense of shared identity, purpose, and values. That transcends individual differences. It's like a social glue that binds people together around a common narrative.
kind of like those shared myths we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. And as with empires, the impact of religion extends far beyond its original context.
Think about the influence of Christianity on Western civilization. Its values and ideas continue to shape our art, our literature, our laws, even our understanding of morality, centuries after its emergence.
It's a powerful example.
It's fascinating how these intangible things, stories, beliefs, ideas, can have such a profound impact on the course of human history.
It's one of the key themes in Sapiens.
That's a central theme in Harari's work.
Yeah.
He emphasizes how these shared fictions, these imagined realities, are what distinguish us from other animals and have allowed us to build the complex societies we inhabit today.
And it raises some really important questions.
We've covered the cognitive revolution, the agricultural revolution, the rise of empires, and the unifying power of religion. What other major turning point does Harari explore in this sweeping history of humankind?
He delves into a revolution that's still unfolding, the scientific revolution. And this one, he argues, might just change everything.
The scientific revolution, the birth of modern science. What makes this revolution so different from the ones that came before?
Well, it marks a fundamental shift in how we approach knowledge. Unlike earlier traditions, which relied on established wisdom or divine revelation, science is based on observation, experimentation, and a willingness to admit what we don't know. It's a constant process of questioning, testing, and revising our understanding of the world.
So instead of blindly accepting what we're told, we started actively seeking evidence, challenging assumptions, and embracing our own ignorance. That's a pretty radical departure from the way things were done before.
It was a game changer. And this new way of thinking, combined with a growing thirst for profit, fueled the rise of capitalism and the expansion of European empires.
So instead of just conquering land, they were now driven by this insatiable curiosity to explore, discover, and exploit new resources.
Precisely. Think of the Dutch East India Company. It acted like a mini-empire, funded by investors hoping for a return on their capital. They were driven by profit, but also by this relentless desire to chart unknown territories, to unlock the secrets of nature.
It's a potent combination, wouldn't you say? Science provides the tools and knowledge, while capitalism provides the fuel and incentive to push those boundaries ever further.
Absolutely. It's a dynamic duo.
It's a dynamic that continues to shape our world today. The quest for knowledge and the pursuit of profit are deeply intertwined, driving innovation and pushing the limits of what's possible.
And it raises questions about where we're headed.
So the scientific revolution ushered in new ways of thinking, new ways of doing business, and ultimately new ways of interacting with the world. How did all of this impact everyday life for the average person?
Well, the Industrial Revolution, which began in the 18th century, brought about the most dramatic changes in how people lived and worked. Factories, mass production, and the relentless ticking of the clock replaced traditional family businesses and the seasonal rhythms of agrarian life.
It's hard to imagine A world without schedules, deadlines, or even a standard time. How did people manage before all of that?
Believe it or not, it was the railroads that really standardized time. To avoid crashes, everyone needed to be on the same page, literally. And with the rise of factories where hundreds or even thousands of workers needed to coordinate their efforts, the clock became king.
So in a sense, we became slaves to the clock.
You could say that. We traded the rhythms of nature for the artificial rhythms of the factory floor. And with that shift came a profound reshaping of family and community structures.
How so? What happened to the family in this new industrial world?
Before the Industrial Revolution, the family was the center of everything. It was the economic unit, the social safety net, the education system, even the healthcare provider.
It sounds like it played a lot of roles.
But as more and more people moved to cities to work in factories, the family unit began to fragment. States and markets took over many of the roles once filled by families and communities.
It sounds like a pretty dramatic and, in some ways, unsettling shift.
It was, and it raises important questions about the future of human connection and community in an increasingly industrialized and digitized world.
I'm sensing a recurring theme here. With each revolution, with each new way of organizing ourselves, we seem to be moving further and further away from those ancient structures. The family, the tribe, the village, that defined human life for millennia.
That's a keen observation. It prompts us to consider what all of this means for the future of Homo sapiens. Where are we headed as a species?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And Harari doesn't shy away from tackling the big ones.
Oh, he definitely doesn't. He dives right in.
He argues that the future of humanity may be even more dramatic than our past. He points to technologies like genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, and even the potential for merging our minds with computers.
It's mind-blowing to think about.
These aren't just sci-fi fantasies anymore. They're real possibilities that raise profound questions about what it means to be human.
They really make you question everything.
So are we on the verge of becoming cyborgs, superhumans, or something entirely new? Are we really in control of our destiny, or are we just along for the ride?
Those are questions we'll need to grapple with in the coming decades.
Harari doesn't offer easy answers, but he certainly gives us plenty to think about.
Food for thought indeed.
Let's take a break here and come back. Welcome back to Librarian Oasis.
This deep dive into Sapiens has been an eye-opener so far.
We've covered a lot of ground, from the cognitive revolution to the industrial revolution and beyond.
And we've only just scratched the surface. And it leads us to another fascinating question that Harari explores. How have humans managed to create and maintain large-scale social orders? Think about it. We've gone from small bands of hunter-gatherers to societies of millions, even billions of individuals.
That's a great point. It seems almost impossible to fathom how such vast numbers of people can cooperate effectively. What's the secret ingredient that holds these complex societies together?
Harari argues that it all boils down to our unique ability to believe in imagined realities. Those shared myths we discussed earlier. These myths, these collective beliefs, provide the framework for large-scale cooperation. They give us a set of rules and values that help us navigate the complexities of social life.
So it's not just about brute force or coercion, it's about getting people to buy into a shared story, a common set of beliefs.
Precisely. Take the concept of human rights, for example. They don't exist in the natural world. They're a human invention, a set of principles that we've collectively agreed to uphold. But because so many people believe in them, they have real power to shape our laws, our institutions, and our behavior.
It's almost like that saying, if you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it.
Harari wouldn't necessarily endorse that kind of manipulation, but he does acknowledge how powerful these shared fictions can be in shaping human behavior.
So we create these imagined realities, these systems of belief to make sense of the world and to organize ourselves. But how do we ensure that everyone plays by the rules? How do we maintain order in these vast and complex societies?
That's where things get really interesting. Harari explores how different societies throughout history have used a combination of tools and strategies to maintain order, from laws and punishments to social norms and religious beliefs. He emphasizes that these systems are constantly evolving, adapting to new challenges and circumstances.
It sounds like a delicate balancing act, trying to create a system that's stable enough to maintain order, but flexible enough to adapt to change. It's no wonder that human history is full of revolutions, reforms, and all sorts of social upheaval.
Exactly. And Harari doesn't shy away from exploring the darker side of these social orders, the hierarchies, the inequalities, the injustices that often arise when humans attempt to impose order on such a grand scale.
It's a sobering reminder that progress isn't always linear, and that even our most cherished values can be twisted and distorted to serve less than noble ends. It makes you really appreciate the responsibility we all have in shaping a just and equitable society.
It does, doesn't it? Harari's work is a call for critical thinking, for questioning our assumptions, and for recognizing the power of these shared stories in shaping our world.
It's also a reminder that history isn't just a collection of dates and events. It's a story about us, about our choices, our beliefs, and the enduring legacy of our collective actions.
And those legacies can be both inspiring and terrifying. Harari doesn't let us forget that our species, for all its ingenuity and creativity, has also been responsible for unimaginable cruelty and destruction.
It's a sobering thought. But it also highlights the fact that we have the power to learn from our past, to choose a different path, to create a future that's more just, more equitable, and more sustainable.
That's the hope, isn't it? That by understanding our past, we can create a better future for ourselves and for all life on this planet.
Absolutely. Now, we've talked a lot about the big ideas in Sapiens, but what about the specific examples? Harari is a master storyteller, and he uses fascinating anecdotes and vivid historical details to bring these concepts to life.
He really is a gifted writer. He knows how to weave together compelling narratives with profound insights.
What are some of the stories that really stood out to you? What are some of the nuggets of knowledge that you took away from the book?
One that comes to mind is his discussion of the ancient city of Uruk in Mesopotamia. He uses it as an example of how, with the rise of agriculture and the emergence of cities, humans began to create increasingly complex systems of record-keeping and administration.
Uruk. Wasn't that one of the first true cities in human history?
That's right. And Harari describes how the people of Uruk developed a system of writing, using clay tablets to record everything from grain transactions to legal codes.
So they basically invented bureaucracy.
In a nutshell, yes. They needed a way to manage the complexities of urban life, to track resources, to enforce laws, and to maintain order in a society that was vastly larger and more complex than anything that had come before.
It makes you wonder if we're hardwired for bureaucracy, if it's just a natural consequence of our growing complexity as a species.
It's certainly a question worth pondering, and it ties into Harari's broader point about how the stories we tell ourselves, the systems we create, have a profound impact on how we live, how we think, and even how we define what it means to be human.
I'm starting to see how Sapiens isn't just a history book. It's a philosophy book, a sociology book, even a bit of a self-help book, all rolled into one.
It really is a multifaceted work.
It's a book that challenges you to see the world and yourself in a new light. It's a book that asks big questions and offers profound insights into the human condition.
And it's surprisingly accessible. It's not just for academics.
It also makes you appreciate the incredible journey our species has been on. From those humble beginnings as hunter-gatherers on the African savanna to our current position as the dominant species on planet Earth. It's a story that's both awe-inspiring and humbling.
It really puts things into perspective.
It is indeed. And it makes you wonder what the next chapter of this story will hold. What challenges will we face? What choices will we make? And what will become of Homo sapiens in the centuries and millennia to come?
Those are questions that Harari leaves us to ponder. He doesn't offer easy answers, but he provides us with the tools to think critically about the past, the present, and the future.
He also reminds us that ultimately the future is not predetermined. It's something we create through our choices, our actions, and the stories we choose to believe in.
And that brings us to a crucial question that Harari grapples with throughout the book, the question of happiness.
Happiness. It seems like that's something everyone's chasing.
We've built empires, we've revolutionized science and technology, we've amassed unprecedented wealth and power, but are we any happier?
It's the age-old question, isn't it? Does material progress actually translate into greater well-being? What's Harari's take on this?
He delves into this complex relationship between power, wealth, and happiness, and he challenges some of our deeply held assumptions. He argues that there's no clear correlation between material progress and levels of contentment.
So you're telling me that all those fancy gadgets, those luxurious vacations, those high-paying jobs, they don't necessarily make us happier.
Not necessarily. Harari points out that happiness is ultimately determined by our biochemistry, by the complex interplay of hormones and neurotransmitters in our brains.
So it's not about what we have or what we achieve, but about how our brains are wired.
To a large extent, yes. He suggests that our biochemistry sets a baseline level of happiness, and while external factors can certainly cause fluctuations, we tend to revert to this baseline over time. It's like a thermostat that keeps our emotional temperature within a certain range.
So even if I win the lottery, that surge of joy will eventually fade, and I'll end up back where I started, emotionally speaking.
That's the idea. Of course, external factors can have a significant impact on our well-being. But Harari argues that our internal biochemistry plays a more fundamental role in shaping our overall happiness.
That's a bit disheartening. So what's the point of all this striving, all this progress, if it doesn't ultimately lead to greater happiness?
That's a question that philosophers have been wrestling with for centuries. Harari doesn't offer a definitive answer, but he does suggest that perhaps happiness isn't the ultimate goal. Perhaps it's more about finding meaning and purpose in our lives, about connecting with something larger than ourselves.
I can see how that might be more fulfilling than just chasing fleeting pleasures. But how do we find that meaning and purpose? Where do we even begin to look?
Harari explores different approaches that humans have taken throughout history, from religion and spirituality to art and philosophy to social activism and political engagement. He suggests that there's no one-size-fits-all answer, that the search for meaning is a personal journey, one that each individual must undertake for themselves.
It's a journey that requires introspection, reflection, and a willingness to grapple with the big questions about life, the universe, and everything.
Precisely. And Harari encourages us to approach this journey with curiosity, with open minds, and with a willingness to challenge our own assumptions and beliefs.
It's a challenge worth embracing, isn't it? After all, what's the point of all this knowledge, all this progress, if we don't use it to live more meaningful, more fulfilling lives?
That's the ultimate message of Sapiens. It's a call to action, an invitation to engage with the big questions, and to use our knowledge and our power to shape a better future, for ourselves and for all of humanity. It's a powerful message, one that resonates deeply, and it's what makes Sapiens more than just a history book. It's a guidebook for navigating the complexities of the human experience, for understanding our past, for making sense of our present, and for shaping a more meaningful future.
And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
Okay.
We've explored this vast panorama of human history, from the cognitive revolution to the present day, uncovering the key revolutions, the driving forces, and the enduring legacies that have shaped our species.
It's been quite a journey.
It's been an incredible journey, one that's left me with more questions than answers, but also with a renewed sense of wonder and a deeper appreciation for the complexities of the human story.
I think that's one of the things that makes Sapiens so special.
And that, I believe, is the ultimate gift of Sapiens. It opens our minds to new possibilities, challenges our assumptions, and encourages us to think critically and creatively about the past, the present, and the future.
It's a real mind expander.
I can't recommend this book enough to our listeners.
Yeah.
Pick up a copy of Sapiens, dive into its pages, and get ready to embark on your own intellectual adventure. It's a journey you won't soon forget.
You definitely won't. And as always, dear listeners, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those pages turning.
Until next time, happy reading.